I think it goes back to an incident that happened when I was in Iraq in 2006. When I took action against a commander that at that time the Secretary of Defense served with when he was a platoon leader for violating the rules of engagement, something that I think are very, very important. And we know from the Secretary's comments that general officers, he wants to change our adherence to rules of engagement.
He did talk about rules of engagement. There are some people over the years who did complain that the rules of engagement were too strict. You don't believe so?
I do not believe so. I do not believe they were politically motivated or overbearing. I believe that we worked very hard to make the rules of engagement something that soldiers could follow, and it lowered the risk to them if, in fact, they followed those rules of engagement. And they did, for the most part.
And the rules of engagement, again, are there to protect civilians and non-combatants, correct?
That's exactly right. And provide proportionality for the use of lethality to protect civilians and to protect prisoners or detainees.
And I want to talk this morning, and you talk about rules of engagement. The president wants to send National Guardians. It's here in Washington, D.C., of course, that's different, to Chicago, to other cities. When you see that happening, what are your thoughts?
Well, I get very, very concerned because our forces don't train on a regular basis for that kind of duty and that kind of security. I also worry because the rules of engagement for police are much different than the rules of engagement that we apply in combat. They have a higher standard, proportionality standard, when applying those rules of engagement. And quite frankly, our forces are not trained in applying them.
And I want to go back to the speech again, just overall, just finally hear what you heard in the military going forward. You heard him say to the generals, if you do not agree with this, resign. Do you think people will resign? Is there a red line? Is there anything unlawful about what he said?
No, there's nothing unlawful about what he said, nothing whatsoever. I'm concerned about what I consider an attack on women, and the fact that there are people who say that women have been let into different combat fields and cannot meet the standards. I just don't believe that's true. I know when the Army opened up the Ranger program, the standards did not change at all. Not at all. And the fact of the matter is, in today's battlefield, everybody's in combat. Everybody's in combat. We found that out in Iraq. The minute you set foot from Kuwait into Iraq, you went into harm's way. And we needed medics. And many of our women were assigned to medical units. So we had to pull them out and set them up with convoys. And he did amazing.
Okay, thanks so much for joining us this morning, General Corelli. Good to see you again. Coming up, who's taking the blame for the shutdown? The roundtable shares their take when we come back.
When Shakespeare starts to feel a bit complex, and you've got questions upon questions, you can just ask Google to break it all down, and even ask follow-ups, so you can keep up with every twist, turn, and sibling rivalry. Spoiler alert, it doesn't end well.
4 million people have turned to self to help make their financial dreams a reality. It's your turn.
Jersey Mike's is now an official sponsor of the NFL. Hold on! You're stealing my job! I don't want to steal anything. Lies! Lies! I just love these subs. It's a Jersey Mike's thing. A sub above.
love more. And I think that there's a price to pay for the Democrats shutting this down. They've shut it down because of a political reason.
The debate within the GOP over whether the Trump administration should target blue states with cuts as the government shutdown drags on. The roundtable will discuss that and more when we come back.
Stability, precision. That's the essence of driving often.
Republicans took control of Congress in January. They've had 6 months since the fiscal year 25 bill was approved with bipartisan support to get those appropriation bills on the floor and into the Oval Office. The president bears responsibility as the leader of our nation to bring these parties together and to try to make sure that they can get this continuing resolution passed. So I put the blame squarely on the Republicans because they control the House and the Senate. But ultimately, I'm worried about federal workers and I'm worried about our country because this shutdown should not be occurring.
And Ryan's voters, those polls polled anyway, do seem to be putting the blame on the Republicans. In the most recent Washington Post poll found more people blame Republicans than Democrats for the shutdown, and voters consistently say they want those Obamacare subsidies extended.
I've seen polls all over the place. This is the most stupid thing I think I've ever witnessed in Washington, D.C. We passed the budget bill in July. The Republicans have offered a clean CR, which means we're going to keep funding the government for the next 6 weeks at the exact same levels that we've always been funding it. The same bill that the Democrats voted on 4 times, the same bill that Chuck Schumer argued for voting for numerous times on the floor. I mean, the guy, and by the way, what do they want to fund with this $1.5 trillion? And I'm ready to argue illegal immigration because I know it inside and out as far as healthcare, Medicaid, state exchanges, emergency reimbursements through Medicare and Obamacare. They want to fund people who don't want to go to work, who are able-bodied, have no kids under 7 years old, with mental illness, and they want to fund illegal immigration through state exchanges and reimbursements set up by Obama and Biden. 100% fact check.
Talk to the ranchers, talk to small businesses, talk to farmers, talk to Americans who do not get their coverage through their employer, and they are worried about their premiums doubling over the next 6 weeks. This is a real crisis. The Democrats have tried to get the Republicans to address this health care crisis. Most Americans live paycheck to paycheck. I don't know, Mr. President, you have a I don't know this number, but you know this number. You should say, Mr. President, help make sure these federal workers are reimbursed for staying on the job. Make sure that we can bring back a they're going to get paid. They're going to get paid.
Absolute double-faced fraud who's been arguing for 30 years that it's irresponsible to have policy debates.
Just a second, I want to shut you guys down and go to the end because you didn't really answer that question, right? It's about polls.
Polls
should it's a Washington Post poll and a Kaiser Family Fund. Should the White House be concerned about this when they look at polls like that? I'm sure there are other polls, but when they look at polls like this that are blaming the Republicans, should the White House be nervous?
Yeah, Republicans should be nervous too, but both parties should.
Just a second.
Oh, not at all.
You know why that is? You have a padded butt. So if you fall down, it doesn't hurt.
Go to the end because you didn't really answer that question, right? It's about polls. Polls should. It's a Washington Post poll and a Kaiser Family Fund. Should the White House be concerned about this? But when they look at polls like that, I'm sure there are
In case you got me for my cold ass rap.
Yeah, Republicans should be nervous too, but both parties are watching those polls very closely right now. They're doing their own polling, they're monitoring this. If the Republican team starts to turn, that's when we might see some change. And then Republicans know that the affordable care act is being addressed. Both parties think it's going to be a little bit harder on the Republican side because there's some who don't support those subsidies from a political standpoint. And so Democrats are using their leverage. It's the right time for them as letters are currently
Love
going
song
out
on
to
the
people, to
Pier.
voters.
God bless you. Santa Monica, pray for
increase
peace.
dramatically at the end of the year. And so they think that they have the leverage right now. They think they have public support, but getting back to polls, they're watching it very closely.
He's going to bailing out farmers. He is And he should, because his tariffs are hurting him. The president can bring the Israelis and Hamas together, bring the Democrats and Republicans over. It's a football day. The Saints are playing. We need some good luck anyway. Bring them over.
And Prince, I do want to ask you about the mass firings that the president has promised. We haven't seen that yet. We've seen some silly memes about it. They say, no, it would be really hard to lay off these people. But that hasn't happened. Will that happen? What's the end game?
It may happen, and maybe it's a point of leverage. I'm sure that's what's going on here. All I'm saying is this. I agree that these arguments over the extenders are important. I get the hospital reimbursement issue is important going on here.
Hard to laugh you about the firings that the president has promised. We haven't seen that yet. We've seen some silly memes about it. They say, no, it would be really hard to lay off these people. But that hasn't happened. Will that happen? What's the end game?
It may happen, and maybe it's a point of leverage. I'm sure that's what's going on here. All I'm saying is this. I agree that these arguments over the extenders are important. I get the hospital reimbursement issue is important. Rural hospitals are important. I get it. But I think the idea that we're doing this in a continuing resolution when we can fund the government for 5 weeks, and then they're going to get to these issues in the omnibus bill. I mean, we know this is true, and the Democrats have been saying this for years. Now they're on the other side saying something different.
And Leanne, I'm going to let you finish here. We have about 30 seconds. How long do you think this can last? I mean, what is the sense up there?
So it's interesting because earlier in the week, the sense was that it was not going to last very long. But on Friday, you heard press conferences from both leaders talking to aides and leadership, and they don't see a way out of it right now. Conversations are not happening. And again, it's going to get back to public opinion, and there's delay, and both parties are watching that. climate change.
And I'm sure everybody watching the polls will watch the government shut down and hope it ends pretty soon. Thanks for all of you for being here this morning.
When you're trying to take a study break, when you can't get your finance class off your mind, you can just ask Google to dive deeper into any topic. So you're prepared for whatever the class throws at you. Wait, you didn't save me a slice?
In a survey of 1,000 Americans, half have less than $500 in savings, with some $1+ million are building credit and savings.
This is what you need to know now. First, the big story. There is breaking news. See this? Wow. Extraordinary stories.
Thanks for sharing part of your Sunday with us. Check out the news tonight.
The next guy, all the way from the movie Step Up Revolution, the movie in the house, all the way from our bigger towards Toronto, giving us a people.
When you're trying to take a study break, when you can't get your finance class off your mind, you can just ask Google to dive deeper into any topic. So you're prepared for whatever the class throws at you. Wait, you didn't save me a slice?
In a survey of 1,000 Americans, half have less than $500 in savings, with some $1+ million are building credit.
Grip, stability, precision. That's the essence of driving. Often.
At Grand Canyon University, we believe in equal opportunity, and the American dream starts with purpose. The pursuit to serve others is yours. Find your purpose at GCU. Private, Christian, affordable. Visit gcu.edu.
Right now on ABC News Live Weekend, halting deployment. A Trump-appointed federal judge temporarily blocking the administration from sending the Oregon National Guard to Portland. A fallout in how Illinois' governor is also pushing back on the president's plan to send troops there. From former ICE prosecutor to immigration advocate, why one attorney made the change, finding a group empowering non-citizens and attorneys, and brokering a Middle East peace deal. High-level talks between Israel, Hamas, and the U.S. taking place over the next several days. The key sticking points as the Hamas-run Gaza Health Ministry reports new deaths from Israeli attacks. ABC News Live Weekend starts right now. Hi, I'm Micah Jacci in New York, and our top story in ABC News Live Weekend, a federal judge has temporarily blocked the Trump administration from sending the National Guard into Portland. The judge, who was appointed by President Trump, said that the decision to send troops was based on false claims surrounding clashes between federal agents and protesters at ICE facilities. This comes as tensions continue to rise in Chicago after federal officials say ICE agents shot and injured a woman they say was armed. ABC News senior White House correspondent Selena Wang has more on all of this. Selena, this block in Portland is a major hit to the administration. What more do we know about this decision?
It is. It's a major rebuke of the Trump administration, and this ruling coming from a judge who was actually appointed by President himself. And this is what the judge said, saying that the administration's description about the chaos in Portland is, quote, simply untethered to the facts, and that the president likely exceeded his authority under the Constitution, adding that the protests in Portland have not been significantly violent or disruptive and are insufficient to justify federalizing the National Guard, writing, quote, "This is a nation of constitutional law, not martial law." Oregon's Attorney General calling this a healthy check on the president's power. Now, just moments ago, I asked President Trump whether or not he's going to follow through on the judge's order, if he's going to abide by it. The president saying that they're going to take a look at it, also doubling down on his claim that, quote, Portland is burning to the ground.
Now, Selena, in Chicago, protests erupted after a string of violent ICE incidents. Now, the White House says they're going to federalize 300 National Guard members in Illinois. Now, you spoke to the president about
of the worst, as the president had promised. Take a listen to what I asked the president just moments ago.
You say you're targeting the worst of the worst, but Governor Pritzker says that most of the people ICE has taken in his state have no criminal history, no criminal convictions. So which is it?
So you heard the president there. The president is doubling down on his plan to send troops to Chicago and Portland, despite that decision from the judge temporarily blocking the administration from doing so. So the judge's order, it lasts for 14 days, but the state says that they plan to ask for an extension.
All right, Selena Lang, thank you for that. Now to the Middle East. Anticipation growing over a deal brokered by President Trump that could bring an end to the war in Gaza and lead to the release of hostages. U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff and
They once asked Louis Armstrong,
traveling to
how can you
Egypt,
sing about a
expecting
wonderful
to
world with all the wars and all the killing,
and from Hamas, according to Egypt's foreign
with
ministry.
all the bad stuff going on in the world?
Those
And
talks
how
earlier
can
today,
you sing
expressing
about a wonderful
optimism. Take a
world?
listen.
You know what Louis said? He said, God made a wonderful world. It's the people that are messed up in the world. All the animals and the plants, everything.
Now, Hamas says it's agreed
Said if people could just get it right.
plan that would see the release of the remaining hostages as well as a ceasefire and withdrawal of Israeli troops from Gaza. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu ordered the IDF to cease their defensive operations in Gaza. Meanwhile, the Hamas-run Gaza Health Ministry
skies are blue and clouds white. Bright blizzard day, dark singing night.
So similar. Oh, hell yeah. I love it. Hell yeah, Daisy. That's great. You gotta
Because of the rainbow are so pretty in the sky. Also the faces of the people passing by as if we shake hands. Say, how do you do? They're really saying I love you. I hear babies cry. They'll know much more than I'll ever know.
ABC News chief foreign correspondent Ian Paris following the latest from Jerusalem. Ian, President Trump seemed optimistic the possibility of a peace deal. What are we hearing from Israel, Hamas, and other involved parties?
Yeah, I think President Trump seems to be hoping that just a sheer force of will is going to be enough to push this over the line, and we'll have to wait and see. This has been clearly a very long-running, intractable conflict, and trying to get the two sides together, albeit indirectly, and getting them to agree to move forward on President Trump's plan is going to require all of President Trump's attention and all the efforts of Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner. However, there does feel to me some kind of momentum. Now, I think it's worth saying that when Hamas issued their statements in response to President President Trump's peace plan, it was a yes, but there were caveats, important caveats. There were clauses. There were things that Hamas has kind of said before, and the Israeli government knows that. But President Trump came out and interpreted it as a positive statement, as an endorsement of his peace plan, as a willingness to hand over the hostages. And so we kind of are at this point where he's trying to force this across the line. Israel is feeling the pressure, and Hamas is feeling the pressure. I think the key thing here, as Marco Rubio has made clear today, the Secretary of State, is whether Hamas is willing to accept this key component in the deal whereby it disarms. Is it willing to lay down its weapons? And until the two sides meet, this starts tomorrow in Egypt, we won't really know.
Now, Ian, the Hamas-run Gaza Health Ministry says 19 people have been killed in Israel attacks today. How does that square with what we've been hearing from Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu?
Yeah, it's a good question, and the clear answer is it doesn't seem to square at all. I mean, Israel has said that they have suspended offensive operations, defensive only. Perhaps Israel felt that there was some kind of threat to his troops on the ground. It's clearly a precarious situation, but I don't want to speak for the IDF on this. There are clear questions about how much that ceasefire, it's not a ceasefire, but how much that cessation of offensive operations is being adhered to. The IDF is saying very clearly that it isn't a ceasefire as such. And it's clearly a very dangerous situation where you've got an advancing army in a war zone, and it's very, very hard to kind of judge whether or not it's being adhered to. But it's also not unusual in these kind of scenarios where there are breaches, but certainly for Hamas, for Palestinians, when it seemed to be offered that there would be a cessation of offensive operations. That doesn't appear to have been the case, largely.
All right, Ian Panel, thank you for that. Now I'm joined by Eli David. He's the brother of Evitar David, who was kidnapped on October 7th at the Nova Music Festival and has since been held captive in Gaza. Eli, thank you for being here right now. Earlier this summer, Hamas released a video of your brother in captivity that sparked concerns over his well-being. What do you know about his health now, and how are you and your family reacting to the news of these talks?
On August 1st, when we saw this video from Evitar, we know that he was deliberately starved to a near-death situation. He was emaciated, skin on bones. Pictures we've seen only 8 years ago when the Holocaust was over. We know that the only thing that keeps Evitar alive is his faith, and we can see it in his eyes. I could see my own brother in his eyes. He's a full of life person. He's the kindest soul I know, and he deserves much better than this. He has dreams and goals to achieve. And right now, to be honest, seeing the process, seeing this new plan that Trump proposed, I believe it can actually end this war. It can actually bring all the hostages home very, very soon.
Now, Eli, what message do you have for the Israeli government and the U.S. government as they try to secure the release of your brother and the remaining hostages?
I think right now, the first thing we have to make sure that happens is to implement the first point of President Trump's plan, which is releasing all hostages within 72 hours. The Israeli government has publicly agreed to that already. They stopped the war. They are letting humanitarian aid flow into Gaza. They agreed to retreat to the Green Line, which Trump has drawn. And right now, what we need is the agreement of Hamas and negotiators, the mediators, to put all pressure on Hamas to make sure it happens. Because the hostages, my brother, they just don't have the time. They don't have the time for complicated process or for any mechanism, a mechanism releasing all hostages.
Now, Eli, Israel has long held that in addition to securing the release of the hostages, it also needs to dismantle Hamas and eliminate future threats of attacks similar to October 7th in the future. What do you want to see in terms of a future for Israel and for the Palestinians?
I want to see peace. I think that's the only thing that can happen. Anything else is just unacceptable. But the first thing that must happen in order to do so is to release all hostages. It started with the hostages, and it will end with hostages, and then we can proceed. Then we can hope for a better future for all of us.
And I just want to ask you personally, I know you're in contact with your brother Itamar. Can you talk to me about what it's been like on the ground there now? I know that we've been seeing the images and we've been hearing the reports, but just from you, what has it been like on the ground there now in Gaza?
It's very brutal. The living hostages, about 20 of them, they live in filthy tunnels, 100 feet underground, in a very narrow places. Some of them are separated from the other hostages, so they are in solitude. My brother is probably in solitude right now. He has abusive captors, he's barely eating, eternal darkness all the time. It's hell on earth. It is hell. And the only thing that they have, the only thing that the hostages have right now is the faith to be released eventually. It's hope and brave actions like Trump's actions are giving them this hope, because they are losing hope every day and they have to find it every morning. And I pray every night I go to sleep, and every morning I wake up, I pray that our leaders will have the strength, will have the wisdom to make the right choices, to make the moral choices. So the hostages will be here as soon as possible, and also to maintain peace on the long term.
Eli, David, thank you for these words.
Thank you very much.
All right, coming up, from ICE prosecutor to immigration advocate, as we mark Hispanic and Latin American Heritage Month, I'll sit down with one attorney who explained why she made the career change.
What words do I live by? Through hardships to the stars. With every setback, it's an opportunity to grow. Pandora Talisman.
When you're trying to take a study break, but you can't get your finance class off your mind, you can just ask Google to dive deeper into any topic. So you're prepared for whatever the class throws at you. Wait, you didn't save me a slice? Stability, precision, and sleekness of driving, often.
Look at that. Right, look at that. Look at that. You gotta get him going.
Celebration comes as part of the community lives in fear amid President Trump's sweeping immigration crackdown. Outrage has been growing as families have been torn apart by the nationwide ICE raids leading to some violent protests. Now, my next guest, Veronica Cardenas, served as a former ICE prosecutor for more than 10 years. Now, as the daughter of two South American immigrants, her father came legally from Peru, while her mother illegally crossed the border. She now works for ICE, but instead founded her organization, Immigration, one that empowers non-citizens and the attorneys who advocate for them through education and support. And she joins me now here on set for more of her. Thank you so much for joining me. Now, I want to start by asking this. You're the former assistant chief prosecutor for ICE. Seeing the streets throughout America right now, is this the way the agency is supposed to work?
This is not the way the agency is supposed to work. And when I started in 2010 under the Obama administration, there was measured discretion. It was not children, criminals. It was felons, not families. And being in that type of environment where there was discretion to go after the bad guys and not to enforce immigration laws with the full force against children, against families, against